So we've been in Jersey City for a week. We are here with our good friend, Patrick Mason.
Hello.
What's up, Patrick Mason? Look in the camera. Say hi to the people.
Hi.
And we are doing something a little different than our normal episode. We are actually not doing an Ask a Local because we're not chasing Patrick around with a GoPro. We don't have time for that. And
he's too busy.
My knees hurt.
He's too... And we are not doing our standard episode where Denise and I are recapping a city. Instead, we are doing Jersey City and a little touch of Hoboken here in New Jersey right now with our friend Patrick Mason. Who better to lead this episode than our guy?
I'm leading it?
You're leading it?
Oh, yeah. This is all you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's our
this is exciting.
It is. This is our ask an
It's your big moment. Don't screw it up.
Let's ask an expert.
Bring it on.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hey, listeners. Ever wonder what it would be like to blow up your comfort zone at the tender age of 50? Well, we did just that. When our last kid went off to college, we hit the road in search of a new hometown. Now we bounce from city to city and bring you along for the ride. This is the Skip Town All-Stars podcast.
Welcome back, All-Stars, to another great edition of Skip Town. We have a very special presentation for you today. I'm excited that one of my best friends of all time, Patrick, is here. Say hi, Patrick.
Hello.
You're so subdued right now. I don't expect that.
If you have been listening to our show, especially in the beginning, Patrick hasn't done it quite as often in the last 5 or 6, 7 episodes, but early in the beginning, we always mentioned Patrick because Patrick would fact check us, which we loved and appreciated, but you've been a little quiet lately.
Well, I think everyone needs to know that by trade, I'm a copy editor.
That is true.
Right?
Yeah. So he's real time correcting our grammar on the subway over to work every morning.
And facts too. And facts.
But today we are going to stay calm, cool, and collective. And we are not going to let him get under our skin.
You missed that one.
I feel like I'm in a prime seat to get smacked from either side. So.
No, he said collective.
Okay.
Calm, cool, and collective. You'll catch it when you listen to this show.
Oh, okay.
He's going to throw.
You missed that? You left.
He's going to throw Easter eggs in there. Patrick, he's going to be throwing Easter eggs in there. Calm, cool, and collective.
And I'm going to see if you're going to refutate them.
Collected.
Oh, man. See, that was a trick. Okay.
Anyway.
Now I'm on my game.
Okay.
Now you're
It's
on your
early.
game. Yeah. Now you've
only had
entered,
one cup of
now
coffee.
you've entered work mode.
Yeah.
You know, you're one of the smartest people I know. I'm just going to say that from the outset. And the fact that you actually listen to Denise and I every week, it's like you either really love us or you really enjoy the show. It's probably the former, not the latter.
I enjoy it.
It's very nice. Even when you critique us, I'm so excited that you listened. I never get upset at the critiques. I'm like, he listened this week. I cannot believe Patrick listened. Like, first of all, you have a very full schedule.
Yeah.
And you could be listening to anything.
Mm-hmm.
You choose to listen to us. So it is a huge compliment.
Oh, totally. He's a music expert, everything. Like he's
very discerning.
I can name 4 or 5 people in my life, especially from Ohio, that really had great taste in music back in the day and weren't listening to, just radio rock or whatever.
Yeah.
And Patrick was always one of them. So I know his music collection runs deep.
It's fast.
So.
Yeah. Can they see those CDs?
They may.
I don't know if they could see the CDs.
Yeah, I
remember CDs.
I did see those when I walked in.
I don't know what to do with them.
I thought, I think they're time to go.
Just can't.
Oh, you should see the ones that are in my storage unit and underneath my bed. Like,
we need to get rid of those.
They're coming back.
I don't know what to,
no, they're not.
They're coming back.
Like
albums.
I don't think
like vinyl,
so.
Yeah.
Like vinyl?
Yeah. I don't think so.
Okay. So anyway, we are here in Jersey City.
No, we're not. I'm just kidding.
We are supremely excited. We're here in New York City.
No, we're not.
We are not. I know.
We're in Jersey
I knew you would push back on that. That's an easy fact check. New York.
We know we're not in Ohio.
We definitely know we're not in Ohio. So the backstory is Patrick and I went to the esteemed Youngstown State University together.
Woo.
Yep. It is, a lot of you don't know this, it's the Ivy of the Midwest.
Yeah.
And we were in what was our major? Telecommunications?
Right? Which I don't think even exists anymore anywhere.
No, I don't think it does.
No, it's just telecommunications.
Just
Isn't telecommunications like phone operators for Newsweek magazine?
Many, many years ago, I think it just meant like technology involved. Involved,
it was a very clinical term, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So they don't have that anymore. We're communications majors together. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, Denise has conspicuously planted Patrick's Emmys around the room. So you get to play a little bit of Where's Waldo. He's too humble to do it, but we know that they exist here in this apartment of his, and we've placed them for our viewers. How do you feel about that?
A little awkward, but it's all right. Thank you, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I know, but nobody ever brags about themselves. Like,
No.
well, some people do, but that's not us though. And
No,
that's not
right.
you.
No.
So we're going to brag about Patrick for him. So
Exactly.
for him, for him,
For him.
for him.
As if we're his parents.
I know I
Yes.
said for him, and
For him.
I had
Ohio
to,
fur.
yeah, I had to
he's
correct
Ohio
myself
fur.
for him. So you find the Emmys.
You find the Emmys. Anyway, so Patrick is supremely talented. He's been living here in this area of the country for about
25 years.
5 years. Okay. So
Going on 26.
going on 26.
Always Hudson County. Never lived in New York City, so it's always.
You never
always,
lived in,
No.
not even
Mm-mm.
briefly?
No. Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
No, always Hudson County.
Always across the river.
Hoboken and Jersey City. Yes.
Okay. So we're going to get into all that today. You moved here then in the late 90s?
Yep.
So you and I had separate journeys. I went to one coast, you went to the other. You also graduated a year before me, I believe. So
Yeah.
so you were off and running.
I was, and it was such a weird time, I think, in the 90s to be coming out of college because there wasn't a ton of job opportunities at that point, especially where we were from.
Yeah.
So I took off after college and went to Brunswick, Georgia,
How
to
was
be
that?
exact. It was hot. It was really hot. It was really hot.
It's humid there.
It was, and the one summer that I spent down there, I was like, I can't do this. So I moved back to Ohio.
And what did you do in Brunswick? Did you get out of college and immediately go into news? Because
I did.
Okay.
I did, and I think the leaving Ohio was a necessity to do that. Like I went down there and just randomly, this was back obviously before the internet or any kind of job search boards or anything like that.
Yeah.
I made my way down the East Coast and I stopped at TV stations in Richmond, Virginia, in Charleston, in Savannah. Happened to drive past this is the craziest thing. I saw like a TV tower, right? The old,
The old-fashioned one.
old-fashioned TV tower. And
yeah.
I was like, what's that? Got off the exit, found it.
You
and
thought
it was,
you were going to cut a record with Elvis?
yeah, right. It basically looked like that because it was in like this TV station in the middle of like a swamp, basically.
Right.
Pulled in, walked in, filled out an application, left my resume. My sister at the time was living down there. Her husband's in Navy, so that's where I was kind of aiming for. The next day, I get up and I went into Jacksonville, dropped off my resume at all the Jacksonville TV stations,
Yep.
and I came back. And my sister was all excited because the local anchor from the Brunswick station called her.
Oh, that's
looking for me. It was like a big deal. Like,
oh,
when
yeah.
you're-
A
when you're-
local anchor is a
local
celebrity.
anchor's calling my sister, and she was, like all excited about it. So I went in for an interview. They hired me that week. I started. It was like probably the end of February, beginning of March in '92.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you lasted in Brunswick how long?
Not even a year.
Not even a year.
It was the heat
So-
that did you in.
The heat was part of it. It's a little bit of a culture shock to live in that part of Georgia. I think if I had lived in Atlanta or Savannah, it was very different lifestyle, very chill, slow, whatever.
But you were
wanna
from
call it.
Ohio.
Yeah.
How different was that though? I mean, honestly, like you're in a chill lifestyle in Ohio.
Yeah, but Northerners, I would not describe them as chill.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's. I don't know how to describe it, right? Like it's like more urgency.
Yeah.
People in the South. I mean,
People are more intense
I'm
in-
almost
in
a little
Youngstown.
envious of the Southern style of kind of just being like, okay, well, it'll
Totally.
get done when it gets done. But there was that, and then there was also another trend that I didn't know that I was going to be, was going to be such a pivotal part of my life was that the first TV station that I worked for ended up getting sold while I was there to another company who came in. The woman who hired me was let go. A bunch of the other people who I worked with were let go. This was all like 5 or 6 months after I got there.
In this small little market.
This small
That's
little
a
market.
big deal.
Right. So I was like, by the end of that year, I'm no longer sweating because it's December, right?
Right.
But it's Christmas. I'm young. I'm like depressed that I'm away from my family. I don't love this job anymore. My sister at that point had moved to Charleston.
Mhm.
So I was like, hey, I'm not going to do this. This is stupid. Right. This is dumb. I have no emotional connection to these people at this point.
Right.
Right.
You weren't loving the job, obviously.
No, but it was a great starter job. It was almost like an extended internship because I was doing everything there. And that's one of the benefits of going to a smaller market.
Right.
I was a photographer out running around in the field with a camera. I was writing. I was, doing pretty much editing. Like I was doing everything.
Were you on camera at all ever?
No, not for that. No.
So you never
No,
played.
the only time I was ever on camara was when he shot my
that's
my college my college projects.
We're actually going to touch on this in my Youngstown / Lake Milton Ask a Local, but I actually showed Mia where you and I first worked together in one of our class projects. So anyway, okay, so
your love has never been in front of the camera; it's always been behind the camera.
Yes, correct.
And when did you realize that you liked doing copy editing? How did that? Where in your career did that come into play?
Well, so the first 7 years of my career, when I went back to Ohio, was
so you went back to Ohio after Brunswick.
I did, yeah. I went back to Ohio, kind of get my bearings straight, and I lucked out because a friend of mine actually worked for a job placement company. So, and this position came open. It turned out that the guy who hired me was a high school classmate of my brother.
Oh,
so
wow.
Everything kind of just the pieces all fell into place.
And what station was that?
That was at the CBS affiliate WKBN, which is now owned by the same company that owns the place where I work right now.
Wow. Okay, but was that in Cleveland?
No, Youngstown.
Okay.
It was in Youngstown. Yeah. So once again, as I'm working at WKBN, the company got sold to another conglomerate. So I went to my boss and I was like, look, I've been interviewing at other places. You guys just had this producer position open, which was completely different from what I was doing, right? Producers put shows together. They write what the anchors are saying. They time out that half hour or hour that you're on the air. And I said, I'd like to do that. Would you give me an opportunity to do that in order to keep me here or accept the fact that I'm going to be leaving within the next 4 or 5 months? And he was like, let's do it. So
That's
I
great.
switched to producing. The whole trajectory is so crazy when I put it into words like this. I switched to producing. A month later, that boss was let go.
Oh,
But you got your job. You got that job though, so they can't get rid of you.
No. That wasn't. It wasn't about them letting me go. The guy who they brought in came in instantly adversarial to everyone, right? It was
of course.
It's typical.
He's got to make his mark.
Typical thing where a boss is trying to make his mark, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I lasted another 5 months before I ended up finding the job here in New Jersey. So all told, in Youngstown, I only produced for 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah,
That was fast.
It all happened very quickly.
Yeah. Then you made it to New Jersey.
Yes.
And tell us about, you've been at a handful of stations
Yeah,
since you got
which
here.
isn't necessarily abnormal in
It's
I
not.
think my business. I think
I thought that I thought that in order to move up the ladder in your business, you have to move around. I thought that was a necessary evil.
Well, so in New York, the pinnacle of media, right?
It is true.
There's so many different opportunities. There's so many different places. And, when I was hired to come here, I was hired by News 12 New Jersey, which was Cablevision at the time. I don't know if it's still.
Oh, Cablevision.
Yeah, remember Cablevision?
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. So, and it was a 24-hour news channel for the state of New Jersey.
You just dated all of us. Go ahead.
That job opportunity came up and I jumped at it, moved out here. It was end of March, beginning of April, 1998.
1998.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I was in, this is how it went. My brother and I were going to Ireland. We were walking out the door. My dad was taking us to the airport and the phone rang and it was the guy who ended up hiring me at News 12 New Jersey. He was like, hey, I just got your resume. And I was like, I'm walking out to go to Europe.
But I can
but I was like, I was like, look, I don't expect you to hold the job for me. Little did I know at that time that the process of filling jobs in television doesn't happen.
Yeah, it takes
overnight. Like it's like months.
Yeah.
So I was like, can I call you when I get back? And he's like, absolutely. Called him when I got back. That was on a Monday. On Friday, I drove to New Jersey for an interview after I worked the morning show in Youngstown.
Right.
This is what you could do when you were young.
Right? Right. Of course.
Had my interview. They put me in a hotel. I stayed like an extra day and drove back. And then they called me 2 days later and offered me the job.
Nice.
So that was all.
That happened much sooner than a month.
Oh yeah, it was all very quick. So I was out here. So that happened in March. So it was like April when I finally kind of relocated everything here.
Right on.
I opted to stay in Hoboken because my job at that time was in Edison, New Jersey.
Right.
So I was like, well, I'm not going to move into the city where half of them, like half of that group lived in Hoboken, the other half lived in the city.
Right.
Or Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So I found an apartment in Hoboken. it was so cheap. Now that I look at it, it was so cheap.
You can't compare.
Well,
though. I know, right?
But here's the thing: like I say, cheap in that the mindset of where I am now. It was $800 a month,
which was expensive then. You know that, right?
To me, I wouldn't tell my father how much I lied.
Yeah.
To my dad about
you
how
had
much I was
to
paying.
because this is 1998 and you're paying $800.
Oh yeah, he was like he would have. His mind would have just gone crazy if I told him how much I was paying. So I lied. I said it was like 5 something or whatever I made up. And so I stayed at News 12 for 2 years, got called from a friend of mine who had moved on to WWOR, which was to the New York viewers, UPN 9 at the time. UPN 9. And they called me in for an interview. Crazy enough, at the time that I got called for that interview, I was also interviewing for the place where I'm working now.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So
came full circle.
In 2000, where I am now, WPIX, Pix 11, was launching a morning show. So I was interviewing for that when this other job came up at UPN 9. And where do you think I went? I went with the one that had more money. Right?
Of course. Of course.
So,
get that $800 apartment.
Yeah, right. Which I then eventually moved out of. Everything kind of. But UPN 9 was also still in New Jersey.
Oh, so you still did not have to go into New York.
So I still had no reason to go into New York, into Manhattan, other than to go out, right? To do things with my friends. So I stayed in Hoboken, and eventually UPN 9 in New York got bought by Fox. Mm-hmm. Fox became a Fox O&O, as we call it, owned and operated. Fox then pulled me out of Jersey and took me into Manhattan, where I was for 7 years at Fox 5 in New York. So all told, with between UPN 9 and Fox 5 was 14 years.
Wow. Okay, so that's the bulk of your career so far.
Yeah.
Okay, but I find it really fascinating that basically right out of college, I mean, let's just say you worked at that Youngstown station a year and a half out of college, 2 years out of college, and you are in Manhattan 5 years later. That seems very fast-tracked. That doesn't seem normal because most people in news have to go to little markets. New York is the biggest market, right? Isn't it New York or is it LA?
So I would say now it's New York. What I would say now that I'm here for as long as I've been, and now that I'm actually a hiring manager, it's not that off the mark. It really isn't.
Really?
No. Because I think it's really just about how you do in an interview, right? How you present yourself. I mean, you can have 2 years of experience. I hired somebody recently that had a year and a half of experience in Albany, right?
Small market.
Right. Smallish, right. It's just, the state capital. So it's a little bit busier, but, that to me, it's more about like your skill set, your abilities, how you present yourself in an interview, and, just, it's what you do.
Yeah, and if I throw this person a mess, are they going to be able to swim? Right. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not what I thought it was, because I've always heard that
you're actually thinking probably. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
You're actually probably thinking more of the on-air concept of it.
Oh,
right.
Yes,
so because that is
right.
actually a thing. So if you want to be an anchor in New York,
you're correct.
In New York City,
yes,
you need to go work in Columbus for a while, and then maybe Chicago for a while before you're going to get called up to the big leagues.
So an on-air is different than behind the scenes. Okay, that is correct.
Behind the scenes is not like that.
Okay.
So,
but I mean, look, 5 years. And you are in Manhattan. How are you feeling?
I will say I absolutely love New York City. Like there are people that you either love it or you come here for a couple of years and you bail, right? I'm here 25 years later, right? Like I love it. I fear like where my next move might take me. Like, would I be bored? Would I be, because there are definitely pitfalls to everything. Like I'm at an older age, so.
It's different now.
It's different now, right?
Yeah.
Walking the streets is different. Getting on the trains is different. Like there's a lot of things that change that
come with age.
That come with age, right? So,
and when you live in a city, also, I mean, that obviously, yes,
right.
I mean, we obviously vacationed together just recently, and I called you the night before we were all headed to Montreal, and I said to James, because this is the old Patrick, I'm going to call him, and he's going to be answering from a bar.
Yeah. Because, you don't do that,
and I wasn't
anymore.
No, you did not. It was really quiet, and I said, "Where are you?" Go, I'm home packing, and I said, "Oh, okay."
That makes me sound like a
drunk. Oh no, I don't mean it like that. I just mean you like to have fun.
Oh,
you take advantage of the city. So I bring that up because as we get older, you're not taking advantage of the city and going out and meeting up with friends like you did 10 years ago.
This is to bring Jamie Lee Curtis into this
Oh, yeah,
story
do it.
from a couple months ago.
Yep, do it.
I am all for anything that happens at 5:00 now.
Yeah.
Right? Give me a concert that starts at 5 and is over at 8 and I will be there.
Oh, that's
Right?
awesome.
Happy hours?
Come-
Amazing.
I was going to say it's
Amazing.
merged more instead of let's meet for drinks to let's meet for dinner.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. And then everybody be home by 9:30.
Yeah.
So you're still working in Manhattan. I mean, let's get to present day. So but let's highlight some of the places you've worked. So you were at Fox. You were at Good Morning America.
Well, I left Fox to go to Al Jazeera America when it was on the air.
Correct.
So that lasted for 2 years before that folded. And then I went to Good Morning America for the 2 years that I spent there, which is where the Emmys are from.
I love it.
Which I like to point out.
I
I like to point out that was a full team effort. That was an amazing team. I absolutely loved that job.
It was all you.
It was all, absolutely. It was all Patrick.
Under your tutelage, everybody.
No, it definitely wasn't.
You dragged him
Everybody
across
has
the
to say
finish
that.
line.
It's like everybody has to say
Yeah,
that.
tell Robert Roberts that.
Nobody had ever heard of Good Morning America before you were there.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I left that job because the position that I took at my current job was a management job, and it took me back into the fold of local news, which over the course of time I kind of realized is maybe my forte, right?
Yeah.
It might just be my strength.
Okay.
I actually appreciate what local news does. I'll watch in any city that I visit. I think that we provide something, and I'm not trying to make a commercial for what I do, but I think that, we're in a position in this country right now where there's like just vehement hatred for media, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
true.
And the fact that local news is getting grouped into that is so frustrating to me, because we provide services that are so necessary and so important. If there's a train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio,
Right.
The first place you're going to go is not MSNBC, right?
Right.
You're going to go to your local TV station for that information.
Yeah.
If there's a hurricane coming, are you going to watch CNN? Yeah. No, right? You're going to watch your local station.
Yeah, I mean, in LA, when we wanted our car chases, we went straight to KCAL.
Yeah,
like everybody knew. You go to Channel 9.
Yeah.
There's a car chase on.
Yeah.
Everybody would run to the break room and turn on KCAL.
I'm pretty sure they just keep their chopper up just
I think they
waiting for car
They actually
chases.
have a refueling chopper that they go up
exactly.
just to keep it in the air.
Right. That's where I am now. I'm in this position where I am.
What is your title?
Managing editor for WPIX.
WPIX in Manhattan.
Yes.
And
Channel 11.
Yes.
And I had the actual opportunity to tour your building yesterday, courtesy of you, of course.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the building first, because it's kind of iconic.
It is iconic. It's actually really cool. It's so the Daily News building. Daily News was the newspaper here in New York when it was new and fully operational. Was in this amazing Art Deco building on the east side of Manhattan, right on 42nd Street. The building is stunningly beautiful. It is where they filmed scenes for Superman in the 70s. So the
Christopher Reeves
Superman. So when Lois Lane is falling and he catches her, that's outside of the building where I work.
Yeah, there was really a Daily News.
Yeah, there is. It still exists.
That was in the comic. It's Daily Planet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it was Daily Planet, but there really was
Daily News does actually exist.
And you walk in the lobby and there's a huge globe.
There's a huge globe in the lobby. It's like,
wow. So it looks
pretty awesome.
It's from the movie. Then that was part of the Superman movie to the globe, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, but that's because it was just there. Like,
okay.
right?
I know, but it's in the movie, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they filmed quite a bit of that movie in that building.
So you are managing editor.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what that entails. So you show up to work at 9 a.m. and what? 9 a.m.
8:30.
8:30. Fair enough.
I'm just involved in the morning editorial process with my team of other managers and kind of deciding our trajectory of the day, like what stories we're going to cover, what's important, what which reporter's the best fit for some story that we like, or who we probably should keep away from certain stories. But in the end, like I kind of launch the day of what we're going to cover, and then I field a lot of the pitfalls that come throughout that day. Like with reporters, like they'll call me, this is falling apart. What should we do? Like, I need this. I'm like, okay, let's, so there's a lot of,
Yeah, well,
juggling.
when we were there yesterday, nobody died in a sinkhole. So then you moved a van somewhere else.
Yes,
Because you're like, this
Yeah.
is boring, and you moved them across. Town
I wish
to
you
something
were.
else.
I wish you were still there to see the video of the sinkhole, because it literally the entire room burst out laughing when we saw it.
Oh,
'cause
why was it like super tidy?
It was the smallest thing ever. I was like, I was like, well, sometimes not everything's a hit.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's kind of it. And then as the day progresses, I continue to work with the reporters. When their stories come in, their scripts come in, I check them for facts, I vet them, I copy edit
so
them.
that's where it comes from.
Is it as crazy as people imagine it to be? Is it the whole flurry, people
Adrenaline rush, yeah.
running?
You know that scene in broadcast news where Joan Cusack is running down the hall with the tape in her hand, and they open the filing doors. Well, tapes don't exist anymore, right? But I've been in those situations. Like, it is legitimately like, everything now is basically digitized. So you're watching what we call the rundown, and you're like, why is that not ready? Oh my God, we're a minute away from it. Why is it not ready? And now, and so like, that's the new school of when Joan Cusack would be running down the hallway.
There's no more running down a hallway with a tape
throwing
anymore.
A tape into
it's watching the little stripe saying uploading.
Exactly.
It's like, come on, dude, wheels are spinning.
Right. So it gets a little hairy. It's like, and also to that point, the technology that I think we've all embraced isn't always infallible. And then when that starts to devolve, I've been in situations where entire shows have gone completely off the rails because of technology.
Right.
So for as good as it is.
What does off the rails look like? Give us an example.
So have you ever been watching a newscast where the anchors start to act like something's wrong, and then they go, we're going to take a break, and then they just go to commercial?
Yes.
That means that everything in the background has just completely...
So the teleprompter went down. Everything.
No, not necessarily prompter. Prompters tend to be like its own thing. It's like the system that plays out our videos, or that that take the cameras. Like if you have to hit a button to take camera 1 to see this anchor, or take camera 2 to see this anchor, and when that stuff starts to not work, it gets real ugly. Like, it gets real ugly, and so when sometimes you'll see like, somebody on social media will be like, ha ha ha, look at this. And I'm like, no, don't. No.
Well, it's really funny. I mean, going back to the example of Parker working in Corpus Christi, it wasn't until we went to meet the staff and all of her coworkers that we realized, especially in a smaller market like hers, the vast majority of the staff there is under the age of 27. And it's like, oh, no wonder, like, the wrong graphic pops up here or there or whatever. It's like, these are all kids. Like, they all look like babies,
Is that the case for you? Do a lot of young people work with you?
Yeah, I actually do have quite a few young people. It's such a weird place in history right now, kind of jumping off what I mentioned earlier. This isn't a job that a lot of young people want to do. Right. And so when you find the ones who do want to do it, you're very excited. And when you find the ones who are good at it and seem to be grasping it, you're even more excited about it.
Yeah.
I think part of that is part of what you're seeing and what you just described is also, I know a lot of people that just got out of this business. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to pretend
it's an adrenaline rush from morning to night. Like, from the moment you walk in, I mean, are you drained?
It's crazy. Like, I have one friend who years ago, she got out of the business, and she was my copy editor when we were in at UPN 9, and she went into a world of what then were called VNRs, like, video news releases. And that's basically like a PR firm hires a company to create a video to sell a product. And she said that the first week she was there, her boss called her in and was like, what are you doing? And she's like, what? And he's like, you've given me 3 projects in 3 days. And she was like, yeah. And he goes, you have like 3 weeks to work on each of these.
That's
right.
Awesome.
Like, so she like really literally had to learn how to not be on this like daily deadline craziness thing where she was like constantly pumping stuff out. So I worked for a while in talk when I first started in talk television. So Dr. Phil, I worked on Tyra's talk show launch and all that other stuff. And
eventually I decided talk is not for me. I love the adrenaline rush, but sometimes the environment was so not really chaotic. It just why I think the chaos and the exhaustion can feed into a toxic environment sometimes. And I'm not saying either of those shows were, one of them was, but
okay. A or B,
yeah,
A or B.
One of them was and the other one wasn't. But ultimately I found, as I'm talking with people who work on these shows, like several of them had worked in news at some point, and now we're working in this environment. And they're like, for as bad as this is, it's still better than news.
Yeah.
So for wherever they had come from or whatever their experiences were. So
typically, I think a lot of those productions were done by the same company. So they probably pulled people over.
Yeah.
Or people saw those opportunities and jumped. And back to the toxic comment, it's probably good to point out that despite some of the recent high profile embarrassments for hosts, it's not always the host that's toxic.
Oh no. Yeah.
And quite often it might not be the host at all.
Right.
It's a lot of stuff. There are a lot of people behind the scenes
Absolutely.
in every TV production that can make it either fantastic or make it torturous. So
that's true.
Again, I'm glad I have the team that I have. I think we're all
everybody
we're
there
very
was
good, very
seemed
good.
to have a grasp on everything. Yesterday was awesome. It was a great tour.
So I think it's safe to say you're a really good multitasker.
Yeah.
James doesn't believe that there's
I
such a
don't believe
thing
in
as
multitasking.
he says you can't multitask. Can you prove him wrong right now?
I think you either can do it or you can't.
He says there's no such thing.
I mean,
he literally
you're
he
only
says it
ever
doesn't
doing,
exist.
you only have the bits in your brain to actually be doing one thing at one time.
He says you can't.
Even if you're only doing it for 6 seconds.
Come on, Patrick.
You disagree with me?
Well, because what you just described is multitasking.
I guess
6 seconds here, so like you're juggling things, like you're juggling jobs, right?
I guess,
like
but theoretically, you're only focused.
Because your job is defined by being a good multitasker. Let's be honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the sense that it's just constantly coming at you.
Like you're writing, someone is talking,
right.
Somebody's pushing buttons,
and sometimes 10 things at once. Like that, like it is no joke. It's literally like
all right.
I just stuff is coming at you.
I just think in any
given
moment,
to your point, if I have to stop writing to answer someone's question, maybe that's not multitasking because I'm not.
We're
going to
leave the sirens in because we're in the city. By the way, go ahead, finish your thought. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying like if your point is like I stop copy editing to answer somebody's question, thereby I am not multitasking because I'm doing each of those individually. I see your point.
Thank you,
but I don't agree with it.
All right, enough of that.
And I also think there are probably moments where you have been writing and answering somebody's question at the same time.
100%.
Okay, so you've multitasked right there. Okay, there we go. Debunked. I love these moments.
Most days.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
I want to conversate real quick on Hoboken.
I want to go
Jersey
back.
City.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do want to go back.
Let's talk city stuff.
He did mention, and then I interrupted and asked him a question, and we totally got off track. But you were saying how you either love Manhattan or you don't love Manhattan, and then how your age plays into your love of the city or disdain for the city. So I would just like to talk a little bit about why you never moved into Manhattan, your love for Manhattan, and
So I can easily answer that. So everybody always says to me, "Oh, do you miss Hoboken?" I lived in Hoboken for 12 years.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain to people who've never been to this part of the country the distance of
Hoboken
to
they actually butt up against each other. Oh, okay. So to the city.
Yes, explain.
So if you look at a map, Hoboken and Jersey City are side by side on the New Jersey side of the Hudson River. Manhattan is on the New York side of the Hudson River.
So the Hudson divides.
Yes.
Let's just talk Hoboken, because that was the first place you landed.
Yes.
So the Hudson River divides Hoboken from
Manhattan.
You can visually see Manhattan across the river.
Correct.
You could take a ferry there.
Yes.
Or you could take the subway.
Correct.
Okay, so
and everything you just described is the same in Jersey City.
Exactly the same. Yeah. It would just be their neighboring towns. Hoboken and Jersey City are just bump up together neighboring towns. So
when somebody says to me, do you ever miss Hoboken? I always say, I miss that time of my life. Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't miss
the location.
This was the late 90s when you got there.
So I got there in 98. I lived there until 2009.
What made it so attractive to you as somebody who was single and young? And
my age at the time, my
what did Hoboken look like though? Let's paint the picture. Was it? I mean, Manhattan has always been Manhattan,
built up.
If you're familiar with like the if you've ever been to New York, to this area, and you're familiar with the outer boroughs of Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, the Bronx to some degree, you'll understand that they're neighborhoods, right? They're neighborhoods. So Hoboken, where I lived, was my second apartment, was on a street of brownstones, and the brownstones,
they're iconic.
Bill
They're
Cosby
classic.
style,
Yes.
when the Cosby Show was
They're
on,
beautiful.
or the people sitting on the stoop in Sesame Street, like that, like literally was my neighborhood was like that. Like we would sit outside. I knew my neighbors. I knew, like, they knew me. My landlord was beloved on my block. She was like the queen of the block. So that, like, when you work and live in Manhattan, you're always in that hustle and bustle, right? No matter what.
Yeah.
Whether you're going to the grocery store, you're going to, whatever, you're going.
Yeah. Everything's 15 stories
like
up.
bang,
right?
bang, 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 bang. So a lot of people choose to not live in Manhattan for the neighborhood feel of being in an outer borough or in New Jersey. So when I went to Hoboken, instantly fell in love with the city. Like it was so charming. It was at that time already what's known as gentrified. Interestingly enough, born and raised Hobokenites were not opposed to gentrification, because apparently things were so bad in the 70s and 80s there that they embraced it. Like they were like, okay, thank you. Clean this place up. So, when I got there, I just absolutely fell in love with it. It was like the perfect time in my life to have friends who I've met, friends who I worked with, friends who I had from Ohio, who were all kind of there at that time, to be able to go to hear a good band at Maxwell's, which was a pinnacle of music at that time.
And that was in Hoboken.
That was in Hoboken. That's actually I will only reference this, that it was used to film the Glory Days video for Bruce Springsteen.
Nice.
So when I got there and, started to, and, like to Denise's point about me being an alcoholic.
No. I said you'd like to have fun. I did.
I made connections in those bars. Like I used to, when I worked,
it's a hangout.
Well, when I worked overnight,
there was no Bumble BFF.
Right. When I worked overnights, I would have to get up for work at like 4 a.m. So like when I was living on my friend's couch, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to have to go out and have a couple of drinks because I need to fall asleep. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I found a neighborhood bar, walked in the first day and met my friend Joe Turner, who was a Hoboken born and raised firefighter, who is now to this day one of my best friends. Like we literally met him the first week. I met him the first week I moved to Hoboken.
Uh-huh.
I've seen his family grow. I've seen his kids go off to college now. It's like it became like a family to have those people around me.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
It was a community. So Hoboken was really a community.
It was absolutely a community beyond what I think people might experience in the city, in Manhattan.
And you didn't feel like you needed to be in Manhattan. You really,
No.
Okay. Is it anything like LA where for many years, if you said you lived in the Valley or you had an 818 area code, people would roll their eyes. Yeah. They would say, always had something to say. Is it that way to say?
Were you those kids from Hoboken?
I would say. Or
Jersey City now?
No, I would say yes. Probably not so much now as it was in the late 90s, early 2000s when
just wasn't cool to live across
the river. It wasn't cool. It was cool to tell people if you lived in Brooklyn, specifically Williamsburg at the time, because that was like the edgy,
the Beastie Boys,
right? So
Brooklyn,
if I was hanging out with my friends in the East Village, which is where I always was at that point, when Susie was bartending and we were all like hanging out there.
Yeah.
Susie's a friend of all of ours.
Yeah. So we, if I said I lived in Hoboken, people would be like, "Oh, you have to take the PATH train."
Oh, I was just going to say that. Right. Oh, you got to take them home tonight.
He's a pather.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of that, but it was never to me annoying.
It was a little dig.
Because I would be like, well, I have 1,200 square feet of space and you're living in 400. So, like
for choice of price.
So it was like, right, exactly. Like you give and take, I guess. So, Hoboken, though, back to that era of when I lived there before it started, like now when you look over there, and I'm seeing this now here in Jersey City, you've just seen an explosion of high rises and apartment complexes. And, to bring that full circle from the last thing I said, a lot of people that lived in Manhattan are realizing the benefits of living on this side of the river.
Oh, we experienced that in LA. A lot of people who said I would never move to the valley.
Yeah.
Never
Yeah.
live a mile from
Yeah.
us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Because they realize they can get a 2,500 square foot home and for the same price as they're paying for a 1,000 square foot apartment.
Right.
And
if you're renting, like I said, like you can get a 1,000 square foot apartment in one of these towns versus 400 square foot studio.
I mean, for as many problems as a lot of U.S. cities have with public transit, and even if New York's pales in comparison to some other major metropolitan areas all over the globe, you still have, it's everywhere. You have some sort of public transit everywhere. Yeah. So,
and New Jersey's good about that. I mean, I have the PATH train.
It's awesome.
We have ferries that go across the river. We have buses. Like it's pretty good. Like there are options here.
Yeah.
I think it's just like such a part of life here that's ingrained in how people do things that nobody necessarily feels like, well, I need to live in Manhattan. Right.
Yeah.
Unless you're like 21, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think I would.
You were young and you didn't feel that way, but
I wasn't that young. But no, like I think that there's plenty of young people who are living in Jersey City, Hoboken, Brooklyn, Queens, now Long Island City is like hot. And they're also, I think, choosing like not to live in Manhattan because why live and pay that amount of money for that small space, number one. Number two, why should I live so close to where I work that I'm easily accessible to them? Right.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
There's a lot of positives I think that people are kind of realizing and have realized over the last 2 or 3 decades of getting away from the Manhattan lifestyle.
Well, okay. So yesterday after I did the tour of your station with you, I actually diverted from the course you told me to take home. And I got on the train to Hoboken because I just wanted to get a glimpse.
Yeah.
And I remember that street. Like it's been so
Washington
long
Street.
since I visited you there. But the minute I got off the path, I was like, and there really is something about like coming across this side of the river. And even though there are still sky rises, especially like I recognize the difference in Hoboken now. So for you, it's got to be like, holy cow. But even though there are still sky rises everywhere, and even here in Jersey City, there are plenty of tall buildings. Yeah, there is a decompression factor.
Yeah, there definitely
across
is.
The river.
There definitely is. I think it doesn't feel as claustrophobic, right? It doesn't like you. It's a little more open air, so to speak.
Yeah,
but I see that changing, and part of my let's
because you left Hoboken, so
yes.
Let's talk about what brought you to Jersey City.
Up, yeah.
The funny thing is, when I moved here in '98, nobody lived in Jersey City. Like people were literally like, "Don't live in Jersey City." It was bad. It was bad. It was depressed. It was it was dangerous. The folklore is that they were basically giving buildings away for $100 or whatever.
Right.
But what I didn't.
You guys have leaf blowers too.
Wow.
Yeah.
I could sleep right through them.
I just thought that was an LA thing.
No.
I know you tended to helicopters, leaf blowers, sirens.
Birds chirping will wake me up.
Oh my gosh. You should see us in Texas. We can't sleep with the birds.
Birds chirping, wake up Patrick, but everything else puts them right to lullabies. Sirens are lullabies.
Yeah. We're going to ignore the
garbage
leaf
trucks.
Go on.
So what I didn't know at the time was that there was this really cool artist enclave.
The hipsters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't know that was happening here.
Mm-hmm.
There's
They always make the rent go up. Hipsters are the worst.
Yeah.
Hipsters are the worst.
It's the first sign of a changing time. Yeah.
Literally, they wear their $300 tennis shoes.
Silver Lake.
Yeah. I think
I will say, I have to say, I think that the LA concept of hipster and the New York concept of hipster are very different.
They are very different.
I don't think that the hipsters in New York are coming from money. Not all of them. I mean, I think here
they don't drive Range Rovers.
If there were hipsters in New York City in the 90s that had money, they were living in the East Village. Mm-hmm. They weren't choosing to live in Jersey City.
So they're true artists.
Right. This was like, so there was a factory building that was here that I'm so mad that I missed out on it. It turned into this like artist mecca.
It's like the Andy Warhol factory.
Yes. Mm-hmm. No, it kind of felt like the way it's described, it kind of felt like the 90s, early 2000s version of that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of great stuff that was happening in that world of music and art at that time. And being able to, or not realizing that I was able to enjoy that here in a neighborhood that was less than a mile away from where I was living is disappointing to me. But at the same time, I was experiencing it in the city. Right.
Right.
Like, but so to the, back to the point of not knowing that this was going on in 2001, my friends Matthew and Stephanie were moving from Ohio.
Yeah.
Stephanie went to Ursuline, so Youngstown connection, and her husband Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out.
Yeah, they were moving here, and Matthew came and stayed with me in Jersey City. I drove him around like Weehawken and Hoboken. I'm sorry, he stayed with me in Hoboken. I drove him to Weehawken and other neighborhoods where we were kind of looking at places. And he calls me like a week later, and he's like, "Oh, we found a place in Jersey City." And I said, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's in Paulus Hook, which is the neighborhood you're in right now."
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, it's really nice. It's a brownstone." And I was like,
Don't do it.
I was like, I'm like, great.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know that this was an absolutely charming, beautiful neighborhood of brownstones and restaurants.
Yeah.
And a
And
life
it is.
and a lifestyle that,
Yeah.
you know, to me, I had preconceived notions of what Jersey City was, because I had stories of my friends who would get off the PATH train and run to 5 blocks to get home.
and
at
would
night.
run and would run because it was so
Right,
dangerous.
Right.
Yeah.
They just felt unsafe, whatever.
Right.
So I had no idea that this was going on over here until Matthew and Stephanie moved here. They've now since relocated back to Columbus after a decade here. But, it was then that I started to kind of be like, okay, wait a minute, something's happening over here. Right.
So let's talk about the prices. Let's talk about real estate. So back then, what year are we talking where you decided to make the leap and move to Jersey City? What year is that?
2009. It was forced. I got evicted. My landlord passed away. It was kind of sad, but I got evicted
And
afterwards.
Were
I remember that.
prices so high at that point in Hoboken that you couldn't
No.
stay? What
Mm-mm.
was it? Why'd you move then?
No, there was a couple of reasons. I think I did, like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, that I started to feel a little claustrophobic there because of the way that the apartment buildings were all going up around.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That community was starting to-
a lot of the good character of that neighborhood changed. There was still a lot of great things about it, but it all started to kind of change. And then it was like, also there was a part of me that was just like, I needed to change. Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Like I need something different. And this neighborhood at the time was already coming around to feel a little bit like what Hoboken felt like when I moved there in 98.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Right.
So you were looking for that again.
Yeah, because I prefer like something that has a little bit of
An
grit,
edge.
right? A little edge to it. And this area of downtown Jersey City had that at that time. And it
So-
still does. I mean, it still does to a degree, even though we are now seeing
We're seeing it.
We're seeing it. Like you can't necessarily see out the window, but there's a 745 unit apartment building that has gone up across the street from me.
Right.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
you're starting to see what's happening here, what happened in Hoboken happening
Yes.
here.
Yes.
Is Maxwell still there?
It is, but it's not the same, and it absolutely breaks my heart. I
Aw.
got to tell you, like I saw Frank Black there, old 97s. Like it was, Beck used to come and play like secret shows. It was the place where the Yeah Yeah Yeahs kind of got their start.
Oh.
Yola Tango would play like all through the 8 nights of Hanukkah there. It was like, it was an incredible. There's a fantastic recording of the Replacements
Oh, nice.
at Maxwell's from like 1987
Okay.
that I actually have on my phone.
Oh, that's awesome.
So like it was such a neighborhood gem, and my biggest disappointment with it was that I didn't appreciate it enough, in part because I was working until 11 p.m. at night, so I was always kind of missing all the good shows.
Right.
But whenever there was something, like if I had a chance, I was there.
So did it have new owners?
Yeah, and I think it was also I like, I can't get into the mind of the owners at the time, but I think they also started to see the changes that I was seeing.
Right.
And kind of starting to realize that change, that shifting demographic, was shifting the demographics of the people who would go to their venue.
Right.
Right.
It was all yuppies now.
I don't think that they weren't they were selling out shows, right? There's like tickets were selling because
Yeah.
people would still go there, but there was a lot of other things about it that I think they were just finally like, we're done.
They had to change with the times.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about then housing and real estate and everything. So let's just talk about right now, 2023, 2-bedroom apartment in Hoboken. How much does it cost?
It's probably about 3,000.
2-bedroom apartment in Manhattan.
Not much. Mom, 4 maybe.
2-bedroom apartment in Jersey City.
At least 3,800.
Wow. Okay.
Jersey
At
City's
least.
more expensive than Hoboken.
We talked about this in the car, right? Like, okay, so recently, a real estate company listed Jersey City as the second most expensive city in America behind New York. We've now passed San Francisco.
Wow.
Yes. But I like to point out the nuance of that, and that they really only looked at this downtown, close to the waterfront portion of Jersey City.
Which is how many blocks?
Oh, it's huge.
Like what? 10 blocks, 12 blocks, 15
Oh, no,
blocks?
it's more than that.
Okay.
I wouldn't be able to put a blocks number on it because I don't really know. It includes, to me includes where we are now, which is downtown. There's a neighborhood called Bergen Lafayette, which has seen some high rises go up. Yeah. Newport, which I mentioned earlier, which has been, the long-standing neighborhood of high rises. And then, once you get out of that area and back into the lesser affluent parts of Jersey City, the people who are ranking us at number 2 are not taking that into consideration, right? They're not.
So they're not cherry picking data.
They're cherry picking data, and they're not. And a lot of them will typically only cherry pick their own data, right?
Right.
Based on their own sales statistics and whatnot.
Well, it's a chance for them to
rental
beat their
statistics.
chest and say,
exactly,
look how
exactly.
great it
and
is
of course,
here.
it's buzzy,
In
right?
a way.
Everybody here is going to be like, oh my god.
Yeah,
Right.
of course. Is Journal Square a part of that, or is that
no? So Journal Square is so interesting to me because it's
for everybody listening. I bring it up because I bring it up irregardless of your experience.
You
I
just
bring
pulled
it
an
up.
irregardless.
I bring it up because I know to look for it in the subway station. It's the end of the line. And I know if I'm in Manhattan, that's how I get back to Patrick's house.
Right. So that's why I find that neighborhood so interesting, because Journal Square, first of all, was called Journal Square because that's where the Jersey Journal used to be printed.
Okay.
Right. And that's where, so the newspaper was like the focus of that neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
And the PATH train, one line of the PATH train terminates at Journal Square. Right.
Okay.
It goes from 33rd Street in Midtown Manhattan through the Village and into Newport and here, and then up to Journal Square.
Uh-huh.
I have been hearing for 25 years since I moved to New Jersey that Journal Square was up and coming, right? Gentrifying, up and coming. I think it's happening finally after 25 years.
Okay.
How it's taken this long with the access that they have to the train, and there's actually buses that come right through. There's a bus stop, a bus terminal right there. Why it's taking so long is beyond me. I cannot figure that out, because there are some absolutely beautiful buildings up there, old, amazing architecture, brownstone houses, like that kind of everything that I've just been describing, like in that general area of Journal Square. But for some reason, it has not been able to shake the element of being like poor and immigrant, and it's really kind of fascinating to me. And I actually would almost argue that that's okay, right? Like if you guys had more time here, like there's a neighborhood right off of Journal Square that's called Little India that's supposedly has the most amazing Indian food, because it's
sounds like we're going to miss out.
Right. You're going to miss out.
We're coming back.
Jersey City is the number 1 largest city in America for diversity, most diverse large city in America.
Is that right?
I believe that. I mean, you walk outside and you're hard pressed to find 5 white people together. It's Asian.
When you consider the population,
it is a really good mix. Yeah.
And what does that then lead to? Fantastic restaurants.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you literally, like
you can go anywhere.
Like the
It's
food
insane.
in this
Walkable
town.
streets.
Yes.
The food
Super
in this town.
safe around here.
Yeah.
But the food. He's talking about the food.
Right.
I
can't say.
I'm pointing out all the, for all intensive purposes.
Yeah.
Intensive. This is great.
I'm pointing out all the good stuff.
For all the intensive purposes.
Safety.
No, but it's back to the Journal Square neighborhood. You have a huge melting pot of cultures in that neighborhood, and so as much as I think like, why hasn't this exploded? And I mean that in a good way, obviously. I also think like, this is so great. Don't ever
Change it.
don't ever change it.
Right.
Like, don't ever shake up this little, microcosm of diversity.
No, it's cool. I
and-
mean, it feels like an extension of New York City.
yeah. Mhm.
The difference being that, it's great. I mean, whenever I have gotten up here, gone downstairs to get coffee in the morning. First off, the coffee game here is amazing.
Yeah,
I found
I
like
told you.
5 great coffee
Yeah.
shops. You did not lie. And so that's fantastic. But it's just interesting in this environment to see people pushing strollers for 20 minutes in the morning, getting all their little kiddies off to school. And then all of a sudden you got the business type or everybody running to the path or whatever to get over into the city. It's cool. It's got a great vibe. It's got the same heartbeat as the big city with kind of not all the BS,
Right.
I mean, the one
no tourists. Well, I shouldn't say no tourists. There are tourists here. We're tourists here. I've seen other people walking around with maps on their phones, looking at where they're going and all that other stuff. It's just, it's not Times Square here.
No.
right.
And that's a great thing.
One thing I want to mention is we keep talking about and referencing the Path, which is their transportation. It's a train that takes you from Jersey City and Hoboken to Manhattan. It's very easy to find. The stations are everywhere. You can also download the app, and a ride from a Path station could take you 15 minutes at the least, right? Or 30 at the most. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
It's very quick.
And it's actually, I have a love-hate relationship with it.
I'm sure.
As
get
I
to-
do with most
we
mass
get
transit.
we get to experience it
You
sort
know
of
what?
fanciful, and you have to deal with it.
I
every
deal with
day.
it every day.
I
And-
lived in a city that had no mass transit for 25 years. So
Sure.
I love this.
Yeah.
I love
Oh,
this.
no.
We love the
It's-
fact that you can, like, within 10 minutes,
it's
you can be on a
incredible.
train, and another 20 minutes plus, you're in New York City.
Yeah, no,
That's
I don't
pretty-
take that for
I
granted.
find no problems with
I
it.
don't take that for granted at all. But, as somebody who, the path system, as good as it is, because I will say it is good, hasn't necessarily grown
Oh gosh. Okay. Has
with the
any,
buildings.
I know. Has
With the-
any mass transit in the
no.
country?
I mean, and it's easy for for
San
somebody.
Francisco bloomed like crazy,
Yes.
and they still have their
the same BART that's
Yep,
running that's been running the same
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And they're trying to make improvements. They just recently extended some cars, and they're building out down here at Exchange Place, which is one of the train stations that I go to,
Yeah.
to kind of extend platforms and add more trains, because I think they're now realizing it. But it's a slow growth, and it's
Yeah.
it's not an easy thing to fix a system that's been around for 100+ years, right?
And I think people who don't live on this side of the country or have never been over here, they don't realize the subway goes underneath or through the Hudson
Yeah.
River.
Yeah.
That to
There's
me,
that.
That's actually what the TH stands for. Trans
is
Hudson.
that what it is?
Port Authority Trans Hudson.
When I'm on that train, all I keep thinking is I'm underground. I'm in the water.
Does it
I'm
make you
literally
panic?
in the water. A tiny bit,
Yeah.
because how does it not have a leak?
Who says it doesn't?
I know, right?
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of the
well-
Hudson
well-
on this underground train. It's insane. All right. So I have a couple questions
Mhm.
that I want to ask
We
you.
want to ask you a couple questions.
Yeah. I'm gonna do it. So were you here when Sully landed his plane in the
I was.
Hudson? Oh, tell me where you were working.
I was at work. I was at Fox 5. It was one of the most frustrating days ever because we could not get cameras to the location.
Explain the event I'm speaking of right now.
That was the Miracle on the Hudson. That was when the American Airlines,
Was it American Airlines? Yeah. I think it
American
was
Airlines
just- yeah.
flight. I used to remember the number. I used to remember all the details of it. They took off and hit a flock of birds, and
Birds.
and then Sully Sullenberger. I don't think that was his real name, was it?
Well, it's probably Sullivan, and they
First
called him
name-
Sully.
Sullenberger was his last name.
His last name.
Oh,
Mike
okay.
Sullenberger.
I forget his first name. Anyway,
Tony.
he
Larry.
he successfully landed that plane on the Hudson River. Anybody who's familiar with it knows the iconic image of that plane just floating down the river and people standing on the wings, and everybody survived, and
What was it like in the newsroom?
chaos, pure and utter chaos.
Why could you not get a camera there?
Well,
We were just-
specifically because let's face it, this was the side of 9/11. So I'm sure there were people who weren't watching the news all of a sudden saw this plane.
Well, yeah. So I think there was definitely, an element of panic for people who saw it on the west side. My station at the time, Fox, where I worked, was on the east side of Manhattan.
Oh,
And then by the time everybody kind of realized
What was happening.
it was early in the morning. We were basically out of position with every one of our crews to get them over to the other side of Manhattan when traffic just turned into a complete and utter gridlock. So it took us hours.
How are you a news station? You have no coverage. What do you do?
We were on the air. We were on the air with like traffic cameras and what roof cameras we could get. And eventually, things kind of started to fall into place, but it did. It did cost a few people their jobs, actually.
Ooh,
wow.
It cost a few people
Is there
their jobs.
a way, so just thinking of this logistically without having to sidetrack too much, but is there a way to just get a reporter with one of those travel packs on a subway?
They didn't exist at that time.
They did not?
Okay. Not like they do now.
Okay.
What he's talking about is systems that a lot of TV stations use now, which are basically like a backpack that you can do everything. You could transmit live shots. You can.
Okay. I didn't know what you were referring to.
Yeah.
Right. So they didn't really exist at that time.
Okay.
They might have, but they weren't being used.
Right. They weren't being utilized.
You had to
get a van.
I was going to say you had to get the van.
You had microwave truck or satellite truck.
Oh my gosh! You couldn't even get the subway with a transmitter or anything. You needed a van.
No.
Right.
So if there's traffic everywhere, you cannot get there.
That's exactly what happened. So it was just one of those situations where we were just poorly positioned, and we weren't the only ones. Like other stations struggled as well. It was just the interesting thing about news and breaking news is you're really only as good as how you react and how
your team is
right. And 100%. In that case, we tried. Everybody was trying to get where they needed to be, and it just wasn't happening.
Right.
But we recovered. But the first couple hours of that day were pure and utter chaos.
I'm sorry.
And we were seeing a lot of pictures were coming in. There were things. There was enough that kept us on the air, and we were able to give it the coverage that it deserved. But it was frustrating. So,
honey, it's okay. He's done all right.
I know.
He's recovered. He's a managing editor now.
It is true. I am feeling bad for you.
He survived,
right
honey. I know. She just goes, "I'm so sorry."
As this Emmy sits behind me. I know. I'm so sorry. That
like you had a boo-boo.
Perhaps I was only lucky because I wasn't at a level of management when that was all going down. Maybe I would have been the one to lose my job, but it was
right.
It was what it was.
Right. We want to talk about 9/11 a little bit because a lot of things changed after that time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the whole country changed, right? It changed America.
Yeah.
Where were you? Were you working?
No, I was at the time I was working at UPN 9 in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
But I was off. I think you guys might remember I was supposed to fly to LA to visit you the next day.
That's right.
I had a flight for JetBlue, which had just launched on September 12th.
That is right.
And I was off. I took the whole week off for vacation, and I was flying out there to stay with you guys.
Yeah.
I think I remember asking you, "Are you still coming tomorrow?" And I remember you. Now that you bring that up, I remember
walking.
you. Were you living in Jersey City?
I was Hoboken. My brother called and woke me up. Obviously, like the rest of America, we were all confused about what was going on.
Sure.
And I was like, damn it, I'm supposed to be on vacation. And then the second plane hit, and I said, I got to go.
Could you see the smoke from Hoboken?
Not from my apartment. I could see it when I was driving out. And I made my way to Secaucus, New Jersey, where my station was, and basically kind of lived there for the next 7 or 8 days.
Wow.
But, I don't want to dwell on that because that's obviously very, very depressing incident in American history. But it's hard to talk about where I am now and where I live and where this city is, Jersey City, Hoboken, Manhattan, all of it, without acknowledging how that incident changed the way people live, right? It was something none of us ever could have expected or thought would ever happen.
Yeah.
You have people who, like all of these cities around here that just, were impacted in some way or another. Like there were residents who were in those buildings, or, there were, people who were firefighters that, went over there, whatever. But it kind of, I kind of think of my life in this New York era of pre and post.
What was pre 9/11 for you then?
Pre 9/11 was freewheeling, right? Like it was fun. Like we were hanging out in the East Village. I would roll home at 6 a.m. I think I could safely say that now. It was fun. There was a vibe to it. And I will say that after, a lot of that still existed, and a lot of good came from post 9/11 in the world of arts and music and growth, right? There's always, whenever an area recovers from some sort of tragedy or incident,
catastrophic event, sure.
right? You're going to have growth that comes from that.
Right.
And I think that was a lot of what had to do with the exponential growth of Hoboken at the time, because a lot of people wanted out of Manhattan, right? A lot of people were like, you start looking at how that went down and thinking like, how would I get off of this island if I had to? And so there were people that were just very uneasy about it.
Oh, I could see that.
I knew people in the Hoboken side that were like, have to this day never gone back into Manhattan.
Is that right?
Yeah. Like it's,
wow.
because they don't
the
need
anxiety
to.
of that still
Right.
persists.
Yeah. I mean, it did.
Wow.
It persists, I think, obviously, especially because some of them were people who were near everything that went down.
Right.
So, it did create this kind of shift to the west side of the river, which then I think is what led to what we see now of all the pop up of big high rises and apartments that needed to be built to accommodate that, right? Or it's just all about money at the end. Like if the developers see dollar signs, opportunities
sure.
to get more money, they're going to build to if you build it, they will come kind of concept, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
So it did kind of change just the way people kind of live their lives at that point.
How do people talk about 9/11? Here we are, how many years now?
22.
22. I say, 20, because we just had our 22nd anniversary 5 days ago.
Yeah.
So
your first day in Jersey City.
It was, and it was really odd. Like
it's surreal.
When you brought it up, I thought, I can't believe I'm here.
It's like every historical thing in.
Don't you mean historic?
We could debate that, I think, right?
Don't
we have this conversation once before?
We did.
Every historic event in American history has that initial years following where it's like so devoted to remembrance and whatnot. And I feel like that's faded a lot. I mean, we still have nonstop coverage in the morning of the memorial ceremony. And, it's people don't talk about it.
I was going to say outside though, the actual day of 9/11, is there any talk about it?
Not unless it's like, there is but also kind of depressing. It's like if a police officer or a firefighter who developed cancer from being down there dies, that becomes a story, right? That becomes a news story. There's news all the time about that aspect of what we're still dealing with victims of that attack, right?
Right.
The government, they actually had to go and fight for funding for that program to provide healthcare for people who
for the firefighters
ran into those buildings to help people, right? Like, and it's embarrassing that even became a fight. I don't know if you remember seeing the clips with Jon Stewart when he was down in DC and just completely losing his mind over it. And thank God, he's Jon Stewart, so people were listening to him, right? Yeah. So it comes up in that kind of world of if a museum puts up an exhibit that's devoted to, or that, but it's not. I don't know that it lives in the
vocabulary of
foremind
people,
of every person, right? I think if you're
not living in New York, we don't hear a lot about. Nobody really talks about 9/11. Not living in New York.
Yeah.
Obviously, in our travels, it's not in a conversation.
No, I mean it's relegated to post on Facebook on the day,
right?
Yeah,
and that's
but I was wondering, living and working in the New York area, if it is ever talked about outside of the actual day, but I guess not. Okay.
I think the people who are directly impacted, family members, loved ones, people who work there, are the ones who are constantly living with that over their head, right?
Yeah.
The rest of us, I think, you kind of move on. It's sad to say, like, you kind of move on. And there's a whole generation of kids that are working with me now who don't even remember it. Right?
Because there were two.
They were so little, like, when that happened. Yeah. So, it's just the kind of way life goes, right? We grew up knowing that Pearl Harbor happened, but how much did we talk about it?
There's so much distance between it. But
very good point.
I will say it was especially poignant being here in this area for us this week, because we actually got to look across the river and see, the new tower and everything and the memorial. And it did give me a moment of pause. I'm not going to lie. And I think it just,
it's good to see that
being regionally in the same spot.
It's good to see that recovery though. It's like good to see that and look at it as you know what? You're not going to take us down, right? You're not going to stop us, right?
Yeah,
so
that's the other side.
And and I would argue again to just bring it all full circle to how this whole area has grown around New York, Hudson County, Brooklyn, Queens, like all it's good comes from bad, I guess, right? Like there's always you always have to find that silver lining of whatever.
Yeah, people are resilient.
Happens.
All right, so we have some general questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into. Do you have a top 5 about Jersey City?
Yeah.
Can you bang them out real quick?
I would say a lot of what I've already described: the diversity,
mm-hmm.
the food,
right,
the walkability,
yep,
the access to the city, to
mm-hmm.
Manhattan,
yep,
just the energy.
The energy is good.
The energy is good here. It's hard to describe until you've actually been in it, right?
It's true. Yeah.
So
do you have a bottom 5, or can you tell us what could Jersey City do better?
Parking.
Isn't that every city though?
Is parking all 5 of your answers?
It's all 5 of my answers.
I don't disagree. You are really fortunate. Like Denise and I have been popping out of this garage, like 3 doors down from you.
That garage shouldn't cost like $325.
It should not.
Month,
it should not.
Right?
Yeah.
If I wanted to rent a space there, for
I needed
a month.
to talk to a loan officer before I got back in there today because they've taken all my money. But but I mean, there is space, but it is super expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our friend Cheryl Steinman, shout out. Her father owned, listen to this, back in the day, no credit cards, cash only, parking structures.
Wow.
Still owns them in Manhattan.
In Manhattan?
Yeah.
And you know what she used to do on her weekends? Go with him to work and count the money for him.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Oh my God. It must have been
what
rich.
an education that was.
Right?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
It's like, here I am counting all dad's money.
Yeah, right.
I remember meeting her and I said, what does your family do? And she goes, oh, we own parking garages. And I said, where? She goes, Manhattan. I was like,
awesome.
oh,
hey, God bless him.
Brilliant.
Right.
Nobody in the family wants for anything as long as grandpa's on the case.
Yes.
Right.
You know
right.
what I mean?
And it's like, it honestly, who would have thought? I said to James, who had the foresight to think parking?
Yeah.
Like who thought that you were going to need parking? It's so basic. Like when you think about, it's the most, sometimes the most successful careers or successful ideas are the most obvious. You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, now it's like a consideration for anybody who lives in a major city in the United States. It's something you think about before you agree to make plans with people.
Oh,
if
you're
driving a car.
Oh, all the time. Is there parking?
I actually,
you don't have to worry about that.
When I moved over here and I was looking at apartments, I was looking for ones with parking spaces, but then this one came through and it didn't have one. That's why I'm on the street.
Right.
But then I was like, you know what? I don't need my car. I'm just going to get rid of it.
You were without a car for a while,
no,
right?
Never.
Oh, never.
No, because the very thought of getting rid of my car after driving since I was 16 years old gave me absolute panic attacks. Like I was like, I can't do it.
What if the zombies come?
I can't. Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. Coming from Ohio to a big city like New York, is there anything you miss about the Ohio life?
No. My family? My family. Hi, family.
That's about it, huh?
That's about it.
Yeah.
And I see them a lot. I have a very close family. So I get to go home a lot and see them. And I see a lot of my friends people I grew up with. And, I have no ill will towards Ohio, right? Like I think we grew up in a time when you guys touched on this in your previous episodes, it's depressed and it hasn't fully recovered. And, a lot of people they're still there. I love to see them when I go home. And I just know they're still going to be there when I go back. Right. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean like
they're content.
Right. So I never think like, oh boy, I wish I was in Ohio for whatever. I always think it's going to be there. Like my again, my family's very close. We get together, multiple times a year. We're all taking a trip to St. Lucia in January. So like we like each other, like
which is
how about that?
Which is crazy, right?
Yeah, it is.
because I'm the youngest of 9. So,
Yeah.
but we all genuinely like each other. So, I don't really have anything that I would say I miss in that
Right.
regards to, I think, what the way you're questioning is.
We've traveled a lot. I grew up in Chicago. We've lived in LA. We've been in other cities. I got to tell you, the one thing for me that I've asked so many people that I've come into contact with that live in New York or live in Jersey City, I don't know how you do the groceries. Do you not miss pushing a grocery cart
That's
down
why
the aisles?
I have my car.
Because
That's why I
you
keep
travel
it.
out then to get
Oh
groceries.
yeah, no, I'll
'Cause you
drive to
can't-
the grocery store.
Oh, you do?
First of
Yeah.
all,
You do a little Costco action and all
Yeah,
that?
there's an Acme that's right
Oh.
on the other side of where you guys are staying.
Acme's
so
a
if you
grocery
don't know
store.
what I'm referring to, if you're not familiar with this part of the country at all, when you're in Manhattan, and now I've experienced it here in Jersey City, I actually thought it would be different here. I thought I could walk into a Ralph's. I thought I could walk into a Kroger.
You can. You didn't.
Where?
You probably didn't see. There's a ShopRite literally at the end of
What's it called?
ShopRite. It's a
Is
grocery store.
Is it like big?
I
It's
thought he
huge.
was saying shop right
I know,
there.
I thought
There's
And
a
it's
shop
right
right
next
there.
to. It's right next to BJ's. Like there's a BJ's.
Okay, because
so you can.
I walked to Hudson Market.
Yes, one. Okay, nice little place over there.
Yeah. And I just realized when I got there, don't overload this cart because whatever
you
carry
got to
it
carry
back.
it.
you have here, you
Yeah.
have to carry. And to me, that's insane. And when you go into Manhattan, it's just
Even more
worse.
complex.
It's even worse. I mean, Hudson Market had a baby cart. So I at least got a baby cart.
They
to
call them
push.
But don't
millennial
you think
carts.
Okay.
So to the specifics
So you
to the specifics of Manhattan, I don't think people grocery shop in the same way they do in the suburbs because you're probably going out to dinner 3 or 4 times a week, right?
Is Jersey City considered a suburb then?
Technically,
Got
right?
it.
We're
Okay.
still urban though, so
Yeah.
it's not like suburban, Jersey.
Right.
But then going out to dinner 3 nights a week is so expensive. I just had this conversation in Manhattan. It's so expensive.
It is. It does. It adds up. But I think of people that grocery shop, say if you go to Trader Joe's in Union Square or Whole Foods down in the financial district, like you're only going to take home what you need for a couple of days.
What you can carry.
What you
It's
can carry.
honestly what you can carry.
But I also don't think you overshop because things go bad so quickly now.
Right.
That's
right?
true. Yes.
Especially if you're shopping at Whole Foods or Trader Joe's where things are supposedly organic, and then that stuff is like, in
3 days.
3 days your
Strawberries are mush.
your avocado looks like a
Right. Well,
turd.
even if the
Can I say that?
So-
even if you could say that.
Okay, so the one thing so let's be clear. You did keep your car to go grocery shopping. So
That's
you do
for
miss
that,
the grocery stores.
That's Ohio.
No, well,
That
yeah.
is Ohio.
That's the Ohio in you.
There's that, and it's also just easy access for me because a lot of my friends who lived in Hoboken are now down the shore,
Okay.
right? When they had their kids and they moved up into their big houses at the Jersey Shore, I could get in my car and be down there in 45 minutes,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So
Yeah, that makes sense.
I like that. I also needed that access to be able to jump in my car and go to Ohio if I needed to.
Oh,
Right.
because you are close with your family,
Yes,
so you do
fair
visit quite a bit.
So
Yeah. So, well, it doesn't make sense. I mean, if the grocery store is only 3 blocks away and you can go there whenever you want after work or before work or whatever, then what's the point in buying $300 worth of groceries and trying to carry it home
Oh, okay.
when you have access to it all the time? Like it's easy access.
But these little corner grocery
They're
stores
expensive.
there, and you can't find everything. Look, I'm on these recipe, websites, and when Ina Garten is saying
my
you
God.
need to get blah blah blah, I'm not getting it down at Hudson Market. Okay,
may not be, yeah.
No. So I've
Yeah.
got I'm in a pickle.
yeah.
So I don't know what your New York people do for Ina Garten recipes.
She's the same as the Barefoot Contessa,
Oh yeah,
right?
she's
same,
exactly
same
the same.
person.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway,
All right. So final question, Jersey City, are you ride or die? What's your deal? Can you skip town? Are you going somewhere eventually when you retire? Are you going to work in Manhattan until you fall over?
Yeah, right.
What's happening?
That's a good question. I honestly don't have a good answer for it right now. I feel like right now, ride or die. And, I'm not opposed to an opportunity that might come up that's going to change that. But at the moment, I'm perfectly fine where I am and, complaining about walking the stairs and
In the path.
getting on the trains and sweating when the train doors close in the middle of the summertime and freezing on
Oh
my
my God, I've
walk
been
to the
sweating
train
since the minute I got
February.
here. I'm a bloated, sweating mess.
Yeah. Well, come back in February and
you'll be freezing.
yeah.
So you'll just be complaining, but still doing it.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right.
All
For
right.
now.
Sounds fair.
Well, we can't tell you how much we appreciate, number one, your hospitality and having us here.
Of course.
And number two, how much we've appreciated what you've meant to our family over the last, what you meant to me even before I ever had a family.
Aww.
And for also obviously being a very, very supportive person of our family for the last quarter century.
It's true.
You know, our daughters all adore
I
you.
absolutely loved seeing the growth of your family and seeing what you guys have done so successfully with your girls and raising such wonderful, just amazing women, right?
Thank you.
You've
Aw,
absolutely, I don't
that's
know
so
how
nice
you
to
did
say.
that. I'm going to say,
I don't
you
know how I
did
did
that. But seriously, like it's such a pleasure to be part of your lives and to see that. And it means a
Thank
lot.
you.
It means a lot to me.
Thank you so much.
Same. So if you're around Jersey City and you see our guy Patrick, you better
Say hello.
pony up for a little Makers and Ginger or an espresso
Martini.
Espresso martini.
Espresso.
Espresso martini. Sorry, I just had to squeeze one more in there. That's going to wrap up this episode from Jersey City. Take him out, Patrick.
Empty nest, full tank.
That was very,
Is that right?
That was
very
awesome.
tepid.
That was awesome.
I couldn't remember it.
That was awesome. Yes, we are leaving it.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.